They took him in without proof, pushed him through the system fast, set his bail at 10 grand, then one phone call turned everything upside down. It was a hot, heavy summer afternoon when Jamal Reynolds stepped outside. The sun beat down like metal on his back. He had one thing on his mind: grab a Gatorade from Jim's Corner Mart and be back home before his mum checked in. 10 minutes, tops. Jamal didn't hang around outside longer than he had to. Not in this neighborhood. Not because it was unsafe, but because people looked at him different from the way they looked at the other kids from Rockford High. Being 16, black, and living in a mostly white suburb meant always being careful. He knew the rules. Keep your hands where they can see them. Don't stand around too long. Don't run. Don't give them a reason. When he walked into the corner store, the blast of air conditioning hit like a break from the heat. The place was tight, packed with shelves of snacks and sodas, the smell of old coffee hanging in the air. Mr. Jim, the owner, barely looked up from his newspaper. A white man in a polo shirt stood near the front, his jaw clenched as he watched the aisles. Jamal headed straight to the fridge, grabbed a blue Gatorade and walked to the counter. But just as he passed the snack aisle, he saw something. A guy in a black hoodie stuffing candy into his pockets. Quick movements, nervous eyes. Before Jamal could think, the guy ran. The door swung open with a loud chime, and almost right after, the store alarm went off. Jamal froze. Mr. Jim stood up, shouting. The man near the counter turned toward the door, then turned back, locking eyes with Jamal. "You!" he yelled, stepping closer. Jamal's heart dropped. He turned, confused, but the man was already grabbing him. "Let me go!" Jamal shouted, pulling away. "Don't move," the man snapped, pulling something from his belt. Handcuffs. That's when Jamal saw the badge. An off-duty cop. Panic hit. That guy ran that way. It wasn't me. He looked at Mr. Jim, hoping for help, but the store owner just frowned and said nothing. Jamal's heart pounded. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But the cop wasn't listening. He shoved Jamal against the counter, twisting his arms behind his back. "You think you're smart?" the cop muttered. "I didn't do anything," Jamal said. Click. The cuffs snapped shut. People stared. Some whispered. Some recorded on their phones. No one stepped in. A siren wailed somewhere nearby. Jamal's legs felt frozen. He knew this was serious. Really serious. All for a bottle of Gatorade. Now he was in cuffs, surrounded by flashing lights, his future suddenly out of his hands. And the worst part? No one wanted to hear his side. The ride to the station dragged on. Jamal sat stiff, his wrists hurting from the tight cuffs, his heart pounding so loud it echoed in his ears. The officer who arrested him hadn't said much since closing the door. Just called it in. Juvenile suspect in custody. And drove in silence. Jamal wanted to yell, to explain, to make him understand. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't matter. The police station was a dull grey building with no windows and the smell of sweat and paper. The moment they got there, another cop grabbed his arm, leading him past ringing phones and busy desks. His sneakers squeaked on the floor as they brought him to a waiting area. A tall officer, his badge reading Sergeant Miller, looked up from his clipboard. "Shoplifting?" he asked, sounding bored. The arresting officer, Detective Carl Brewer, nodded. "Got him at Jim's Corner Mart. Owner didn't see it happen, but he was the only one near the shelf when the alarm went off." Jamal's shoulders tensed. "That's not true, I was—" Brewer squeezed his shoulder hard, cutting him off. "Camera footage?" Miller asked. "Didn't check yet," Brewer said, shrugging. "But the kid matches the description." Jamal's stomach turned. Description? The guy had worn all black with a hoodie. Jamal was wearing a grey t-shirt and basketball shorts. It didn't matter. Miller didn't even flinch. He just wrote something down and motioned toward a doorway. "Take him to processing." Jamal tried again, his voice shaking but steady. "I didn't take anything. Check the cameras. Ask Mr. Jim." Brewer didn't answer. He just pulled Jamal toward a small room. Inside, an officer stood with a camera. They took his mugshot, his fingerprints, made him sign a paper with trembling hands. The words "juvenile detention pending arraignment" stared back at him. Jamal felt like he wasn't in his own body anymore, like he was watching this happen to someone else. They led him to a cold bench, swapped the cuffs for zip ties, and left him there. The room wasn't a cell, just a waiting area with a few other kids leaning against the walls, all looking just as scared. Minutes ticked by, then an hour. And with every passing second, the fear got deeper. Would his mom even know where he was? She'd been working late all week. What if she called his phone and it went straight to voicemail? What if she just assumed he was out with friends? A door creaked open. Jamal's head snapped up. A public defender stepped in. Wrinkled suit, tired eyes, probably around 30. He didn't look too eager to be there. "Jamal Reynolds?" the man asked, flipping through a stack of papers. Jamal's mouth felt dry. "Yeah." The lawyer sat across from him, tapping a pen on the folder. "You're being charged with shoplifting and resisting arrest." Jamal's chest tightened. "That's not—" "I'm here to represent you at your arraignment," the lawyer cut in, already moving on. "Your hearing's first thing in the morning." Morning? They were keeping him overnight. Panic gripped his chest. "I didn't do anything," he said again, quieter. The lawyer sighed, barely interested. "They all say that, kid." Jamal leaned back, his heart thudding hard against his rib. For the first time, it really sank in. This wasn't just a mix-up. They weren't going to listen. They were ready to throw him away. But tomorrow? Tomorrow would change everything. They just didn't know it yet. Jamal barely slept. The hard bench in the holding area left his back sore, and every time he shut his eyes, the truth hit him all over again. By morning, an officer came to unlock the door. "Let's go, Reynolds." The walk to court was a blur. Big doors, echoing footsteps, hands zip-tied so tight his fingers tingled. His lawyer, Jamal still didn't even know his name, walked beside him, flipping through his notes like he was trying to learn the case on the way. Jamal's stomach turned. He'd seen courtrooms on TV, but this wasn't like that. This was his life. Inside, the air felt heavy. Rows of wooden benches, a few bored people scattered here and there. At the front was the judge's bench, high up like a throne, and sitting behind it, Judge Warren Kincaid. His lawyer had said the name like it meant trouble. Now, looking up at him, Jamal got it. Older, white, with sharp eyes and thin lips that didn't look like they'd ever smiled. His black robe was flawless. The gavel beside him looked ready. The prosecutor, young, suit a bit too tight, stood up and cleared his throat. "Your Honor, the defendant was found at the scene of a shoplifting incident. The store's alarm was triggered, and Detective Carl Brewer witnessed the suspect trying to flee." Jamal's head jerked up. "That's not true. I didn't." His lawyer grabbed his arm, whispering fast, "Don't speak unless I tell you." Jamal's chest tightened again. The judge didn't even look at him. "Is there video evidence?" he asked. The prosecutor shifted. "There is security footage, but it hasn't been reviewed yet." Kincaid nodded once. "Then we'll move forward without it." Jamal stopped breathing for a second. "Without it? Your Honor," his lawyer began, straightening his tie, "I request we postpone until the footage can be viewed." Kincaid raised a hand, cutting him off. "Mr. Reynolds was near the scene. He resisted arrest. Police had good reason to act. There's enough to continue." Jamal felt dizzy. Everything was going too fast. Then came the part that made his whole body freeze. The prosecutor stepped closer. Given the defendant's age, the state requests he be tried as an adult. Jamal's heart dropped. His lawyer looked stunned. "Your Honor, my client is 16. He has no record. A charge like this." But Kincaid was already shaking his head. "We must set an example. Crimes like these won't be brushed aside in my courtroom." Jamal felt his hands go numb. Tried as an adult. That meant real prison, a felony, something that wouldn't disappear when he turned 18. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. He turned, scanning the room, hoping to see his mom, but she wasn't there, and right then he felt more alone than ever before. Then his lawyer leaned in and whispered, "Do you have any family you need to call?" Jamal opened his mouth. "Oh!" They had no clue. Jamal's throat felt dry. He wanted to shout, to beg someone to check the footage, to make anyone listen. But each time he opened his mouth, the system moved faster than he could speak. Judge Kincaid leaned forward, his fingers tapping against the desk. "Mr. Reynolds, you are charged with theft and resisting arrest. Given the situation, I agree with the prosecution's recommendation." Jamal's stomach turned. His lawyer lazily lifted a hand. Your Honor, we request he be released to his parents while we build a defense. Kincaid barely reacted. Jamal wasn't even there, just a name in a folder. I don't see a parent in the courtroom, the judge said, scanning the room. That tells me what I need to know. Jamal's heart raced. She didn't know. His mom had no idea what was happening. If she did, she would have been there already. His lawyer spoke again. Sir, my client is a minor. We can't assume neglect. Kincaid cut him off. I'll allow a preliminary bail hearing, but I won't be soft on this. His eyes hardened. This isn't the first time a young man has stood here, claiming he's innocent. Jamal's chest ached. The judge had already made up his mind. It didn't matter what was true. The prosecutor glanced at his papers. Your Honor, because of the seriousness of the crime and the resistance during arrest, we ask that bail be set at $10,000. Jamal's breath caught. $10,000 for a bottle of Gatorade. His lawyer barely responded. That's too much. Kincaid didn't blink. Bail is set at $10,000. Next case. Jamal's legs locked in place. That was it. The gavel hit the bench, loud and final. An officer grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the back. His lawyer was already looking at another case. Jamal couldn't breathe. His vision blurred as they led him away. This was really happening, unless she found out. He looked up at the officer holding his arm. His voice cracked, but it was steady. Can I call my mom? The officer didn't look at him. You'll get one call back in holding. Jamal swallowed hard, then spoke slow and clear. She's the U.S. Attorney General. The officer's grip loosened. The words hit the room like a shockwave. The prosecutor stopped mid-signature. Jamal's lawyer jerked his head up. Judge Kincaid didn't show much, but his fingers gripped the bench a little tighter. Just like that, everything changed. Silence filled the room. Detective Brewer, the one who arrested him, stared like he'd heard wrong. The officer's hand dropped away from Jamal's arm. The public defender blinked. Wait, what? Jamal felt the shift before anyone spoke. Judge Kincaid didn't move, but the tension in his jaw gave him away. Jamal didn't back down. My mom is the U.S. Attorney General. The prosecutor looked unsure. And her name is... Jamal gave a tight, bitter smile. Angela Reynolds. That name meant something. It meant power. It meant someone was watching. And in a courtroom full of people who thought they could steamroll him without a second thought, it meant they were in trouble now. The whispers started. A court clerk shifted in her chair, looking at the judge. The bailiff, who hadn't even glanced at Jamal before, was now watching him closely. The prosecutor cleared his throat. Your Honor, given this new information, maybe we should revisit the bail conditions? Kincaid didn't speak right away. He tapped his desk once, then again. Finally, he leaned forward. You expect me to believe you're the son of the U.S. Attorney General? Jamal didn't blink. I expect you to let me make my phone call. More silence. Then, take him to holding, Kincaid ordered, flicking a hand toward the officer. We'll check if what he said is true. If it's not, we continue as planned. Jamal's heart thumped as the officer gripped his arm again, but this time he wasn't nearly as sure of himself. It didn't matter. Jamal had told the truth, and once that call went through, everything would be different. 20 minutes later, Jamal sat in a small, windowless room. His hands rested on his lap. The sting from the zip ties still lingered, but he hardly noticed. Across from him, the officer who had rushed him through the system now held a phone to his ear, nodding, too fast, too nervous. Yes, ma'am. Yes, he's safe. Yes, Your Honor is still in the building. I'll let them know. Then silence. The officer slowly lowered the phone and looked at Jamal. Jamal stared back, not saying a word. She's on her way, the officer said stiffly. Jamal just nodded. Outside the room, the whole courthouse was shifting. Voices had changed. Phones were ringing. A quiet ripple of panic spread through the halls. They realized they'd just railroaded the wrong kid. At the center of it all, Judge Kincaid sat behind his bench, fingers clenched on the wood, jaw tight. For the first time, he had something to lose. The sound of heels clicking against marble cut through the silence, sharp, deliberate, like a blade slicing the tension in two. Jamal didn't need to see her to know. His mother had arrived. The officer who had taken the call straightened his back. The courtroom doors, which had opened so easily for Kincaid's rushed judgment, now felt like barriers. People glanced at each other, uncertain what to do next. Then Angela Reynolds stepped inside. Jamal had never been more relieved to see her. She wasn't just his mom now. She was a storm in a navy blue power suit, and she was furious. Her eyes locked onto Jamal first. A quick scan, making sure he was okay. Then she turned to the judge. Kincaid didn't stand, didn't acknowledge her authority. But the tension in his jaw and the way his hands gripped the desk said everything. Angela's voice was calm, precise, sharp enough to cut glass. "I'd like to know," she began, "why my son was denied due process." Silence. Kincaid exhaled through his nose. "This is Reynolds? Attorney General Reynolds?" He corrected himself, a beat too late. There was cause for arrest. He matched a description, resisted detainment. Angela cut him off with ease. "As I understand it, there are surveillance cameras. Did you review the footage before setting his bail at $10,000? No answer. She turned to the prosecutor. "Did you?" The young attorney shifted his weight. The footage hadn't been reviewed at the time. Angela didn't blink. Her gaze sharpened. "I see. So my son, a minor, was detained without evidence, denied contact with his legal guardian, and shoved through a legal system that acts first and checks facts later." Kincaid's fingers tapped the desk. The arresting officer had reasonable. Angela stepped closer. Her voice dropped. "I've reviewed your past rulings, Your Honor. There's a pattern." A flicker crossed Kincaid's face. Not surprise, recognition. He knew exactly what she meant. And so did everyone else in the room. Angela turned to the bailiff. "I want my son's release paperwork. Now. And I want every piece of documentation on this case sent to my office by morning." The bailiff didn't hesitate. Jamal watched the same people who had treated him like a criminal now scramble to fix their mistake. He could feel it. The shift. The fear. They had messed up. And they knew it. Judge Kincaid's eyes darkened, but he said nothing. What could he say? Jamal had entered that courtroom powerless. He was leaving free. And now Kincaid was the one under scrutiny. The release process moved fast, faster than Jamal ever thought possible. Officers rushed to file forms, avoiding his eyes like he was radioactive. Jamal said almost nothing. There was nothing to say. They weren't sorry. They were scared. By the time he stepped outside, the sky had softened to early evening. The heat was finally breaking. His mom waited at the bottom of the courthouse steps, arms crossed, watching him. There was no anger in her eyes, not at him. Just that fierce, focused look she wore when something was deeply wrong. "You okay?" Jamal nodded. "Yeah." But his voice didn't sound like his own. She studied him, like she could see every second he'd spent behind those locked doors. Then she placed a hand on his shoulder. "I need you to hear me when I say this," she said gently. "This was never about you. This was about what they thought you were." Jamal looked away. He already knew. His mom sighed, glancing back at the courthouse. "Judge Kincaid's been doing this for years, rushing cases, handing out harsh sentences to kids who look like you, while others walk free for worse." Jamal's stomach twisted. "And no one stopped him?" "People tried," she said, "but no one with enough power to make it hurt." Jamal let that settle. If his mother had been anyone else, if he had been anyone else, he'd still be behind bars, just another name swallowed by the system. Angela took a breath. That's why I do what I do, Jamal. Not for the power, but because I know exactly who they use it against. And something shifted inside him. Because she was right. They only stopped because they were afraid of who was watching. And next time, there might be no one watching at all. She squeezed his shoulder again before leading him toward the car. As he climbed in, Jamal glanced back at the courthouse, the place that had tried to erase him in a single afternoon. Not today, not ever again. But the real question was, how many others never got that chance? Some kids get lucky. Jamal did. Most don't. Because this isn't just one story. This is a reality. A system that decides guilt based on who you are, not what you did. A system that survives because it counts on no one having the power to fight back. Judge Warren Kincaid? He didn't just lose a case that day. Within weeks, his courtroom was under federal review. Past cases were reopened. The system that once protected him turned on him the moment he was no longer useful. Power only bows to power. And when the right people are watching, the whole game changes. But the real fight? It's making sure the next Jamal isn't alone in that courtroom. If you believe stories like this matter, subscribe. Because the more eyes on the truth, the harder it is for injustice to hide.